appreciate you coming out tonight. As always, we give a big thank you to the City of Wilder for allowing us to use the facility here. And what we're going to go through a short little business meeting. We've got some housekeeping that we have to attend to. And then we'll turn it over and we'll talk about Trauth area. But for right now, Richard, can you come out and give us minutes?
April 10th, we met here in Wilder. 7:05, Steve opened the meeting. Welcome to everybody. Thank the City of Wilder. I read the minutes. Then Elsner came out and gave the treasurer's report. I then read the donations of recent gifts. Jan Esther reported membership at 272. She also indicated the next newsletter would mail out soon. Dan reported the receipt of a digital booklet of a family that had immigrated in 1833, and they kept a logbook of the travels back and forth. Shirley Jensen reported 7 more veterans added in March, bringing the total close to 17,000. She also asked for more information if anybody knows of any other veterans that are in our files or veterans who need to fill out forms. Steve reported the Silver Grove is having a festival on July 19th, and the society will have a table there. Steve had also met a recent public historian at NKU named Addie. She's going to be a volunteer at the society. Steve mentioned that April was Volunteer Appreciation Month, and he went through a long list of the different volunteers who do so much for the society. One thing he forgot to mention, he's also a volunteer, and if you want to talk about people who do lots of work, don't forget him. Jan gave out the door prize and then we turned over the meeting to the essay contest runners for an excellent presentation.
We opened the month with $2,535.10. Renewed 3 regular members, had $8 in donations, $134 in publication sales. 2 technology internet sponsors renewed and collected sales tax on the purchases for $286.04 for net income. We bought paper and supplies for the office, paid the maintenance contract on the copier and the lease for $457.05 in expenses. Closed the month with $2,364.09.
Janet Moore donated us a framed photo of the Dayton High School 1939 graduation class, as far as a newspaper article and a copy of a program from that graduation. Missy Kane donated us a footlocker that belonged to Lieutenant Thomas Carnes. The previous month we had gotten some other items that belonged to Thomas Carnes. Paul Whaling donated us a Johnson Elementary School yearbook from 1994 to 95 and a photograph of M. Lewis Williams, a former mayor of Woodlawn. Janet Reese donated us a stack of various history books and magazines, which will go into our collection, several books. And Russ Giftray had donated us a collection of Ivan's yearbooks and memorabilia from the early 1960s. Some of the yearbooks were still in the paper from when they were first printed, so they basically never opened and obviously great condition.
Okay, we have currently 277 members. If you're not a member, it's only $12 a year. You could join tonight if you're interested. You can pay our treasurer Glenn and we'll get you signed up. Our members always get notice of our meetings and our newsletter, which just went out. The May issue just went out. If any of you who are members did not get your newsletter yet, please let me know. We've transitioned to a new way of doing the mailing list to conform with what the post office wants us to do, and hopefully will save us some money. So we did it for the second time, and I only needed my expert computer man's help for a little while.
She sleeps with that guy.
So we better do what I want. Next time, hopefully I can do it all by myself. Not too much in the way of communication. We always get questions about ancestors, and we try to help people. We send them what we have. We also always get lots of questions about places. Someone's bought a building in Newport. Give me everything you've got on the building I just bought in Newport. Well, sorry, I don't think we have any. You know, we can direct people to do a deed search. We do have some maps and books that tell where people lived previously, but not a lot on the buildings themselves, unless it's a historic building, and then we have information.
You know, I was talking to Steve earlier, and I said, the dairy is really an American success story. Their grandfather got that dairy route, and he was just trying to feed his family. That's all he was interested in. And it grew, and it grew, and then his sons took it over, and it grew some more, and grew some more, and then the grandsons got involved, and it grew and grew. And based on what the response was on Facebook, I've never had so much response to a flyer that I put out about a meeting. Everybody misses Trauth Dairy and the products that they had there. So with that, I'm going to let Steve tell you the story of Trauth Dairy. Steve Trauth.
I can't believe everybody came out to want to find out about the dairy, but thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. My wife's here, right there, and one of my brothers is here. Jim was the office manager and our IT manager for the dairy. So this is this historical society and a genealogy society. I thought I'd start over where the Trauth came from first and give you an idea about what's going on. We are of German descent on both sides, so we came out of Germany naturally. And my mom came from the Bremenhaven area, which is up towards Hamburg up there. And my dad's family came down in Hexenheim, down by the Black Forest area. All right? So, in about 1850, Germany was going through an industrial revolution over there, and 4 brothers decided to leave over there because the farming community, they weren't looking at farmers too much anymore. They was going more industrial. So the 4 brothers left Germany around 1850. There's a blank space in our genealogy that me and Jim cannot put together about these brothers. We know they left Germany, and we know that how they came to New York, or not New York, but New Orleans. So they left Germany and they landed in New Orleans. But the problem, folks, most everybody came in on the East Coast. Everybody came into Boston, New York, they're all along the East Coast. Why, and we keep asking this question, why did they go around, get in the Gulf of America now, and land in New Orleans? We don't have the answer to that. So we've been trying to find it, going back and forth, and that is one of the biggest things, the older generation, if you can pass along to your siblings and your sons and daughters, you know, how you all got here. Because we're at blanks. We know from New Orleans going forward, but we don't know back here. And it's kind of leaving us this blank space up there. So, okay, let's back up now. So the 4 brothers landed in New Orleans. 2 of them stayed down in New Orleans, and 2 of them went up the Mississippi on flatboats up the Ohio River, and they landed at 10 and 12 Mile. And they settled in there, in that area there. We know this for a fact because Brother Jim researched and found our name on a beam in Stony Brook Winery down there. It's carved in the main beam up there on Stony Brook Winery down there. So we know that that's where the locale was that the Trauth family originated. There's people buried in St. Joe's Cemetery in Camp Springs there that we know about, so we know, we got a general idea of what's going on there. Our grandfather decided he didn't want to be a farmer with the rest of them, so he took off and went to Newport. And when he got to Newport there, he started working with a gentleman by the name of Fred Sherman. And you can see a picture over here. This is about in 1915, 1920, somewhere around in there on that. So as the story goes, Mr. Sherman, by the way, the Sherman Dairy was over where the laundromat is now, or the old Bob Evans farm, is where the dairy was supposedly, we heard that the dairy's right over there. Jim's done a little bit of research on it, and the Sherman family's been in contact with us, but anyway, we kind of think it's about in that area right there is where the Sherman dairy was. Anyway, we get up to about 1920, and Mr. Sherman couldn't owe my grandfather 2 weeks vacation, and that was in the start of the Depression. And he couldn't pay him, he didn't have the money to pay him, so he gave him one of the milk routes. So he had 2 milk routes, so he got one of them. And that was the start of it down there. Now the homestead was at 48 East 11th Street, there where 11th and John intersects right there now. It's kind of built over, we built it over there and attached the plant into the milk cooler there. You don't see it too much, but John Street runs down past Campbell County Fiscal Court building there. So on there. Do we have any old dairy farmers in here by any chance in their past life? Nobody?
There's a hand back there.
We got one?
All the way in the corner. There you go.
All the way in the corner, okay. So as I'm going along, if anybody's got any questions, stop me, because it's all part of the story on that. So, that was 1920. He got started there with that one horse, and they built the plant behind the house at 48 East 11th Street in the summer kitchens. All the houses in Newport had summer kitchens on them. Does everybody remember that by any chance? So they had a filler back there and separator, and it was all belt driven with a line shift going on the top on there. I got a picture of them, but I didn't bring that one down. So they ended up doing that for about 6 years in there. In about 1925, they decided to build a plant. It was about 600 square feet, 2-story, and they had 4 trucks there. Now, I'm placing them trucks about 1936 when they ended up taking this picture. This is the trouble with our parents' time. My dad died early, and we didn't get, I didn't get all the information from him that we needed to get. It's one of my biggest regrets that they ended up finishing the story. In that area, there was 54 dairies. Did anybody know that? Between over in Cincinnati and over in Kentucky. In Newport down there, we had Newport Dairy, we had Trauth Dairy, we had Cloverleaf Dairy. Out here in Wilder, we had Felton Dairy, which is up over on the hill over there used to be. And also we had Wyman Dairy, and there was another dairy out on Mook Road over there. Anybody familiar with any of those?
Yeah, the Feldman, it's around here, I think it was across the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Later on, Feldman's had the dairy stores. Does anybody remember the dairy stores?
Yeah.
Just like UDS.
Just like UDFs, yeah. They had 8 of them. Eventually, they were sold to a guy by the name of Dave Marr, who owned Marr Dairy, and then eventually they sold to another guy by the name of Pete Vaughn, as we go on here. So let's stop there for just a little bit on that and talk about pasteurization of the milk. In this day and age, we're all concerned about our food safety and that. Does anybody know how pasteurization came about? We have any history buffs in here? Say, Don?
Pasteur was a Frenchman.
But Louis Pasteur was the guy's name. Him and the guy by the name of Claude Bernard were commissioned by Napoleon III. I didn't even know this, but I looked it up the other day. So, do we got any wine connoisseurs in here? How many wine connoisseurs? I know everybody's drinking wine in here. Yeah. Well, anyway, what the problem was, Napoleon's wine was going sour on him all the time. So in 1863, he commissioned Louis Pasteur to start getting his wine so it wouldn't end up spoiling on there. So he started using different media between, this is a little gross, and then when I was ended up researching it, I didn't know that. I thought he was only using the milk, but he was doing it with blood. He was end up sterilized blood because of the infection. Louis Pasteur was a microbiologist, a pharmacist, and a chemist, all three of them. And Napoleon, as I was saying before, commissioned him to do a study to see how he could end up keeping the wine from spoiling. And one of the mediums that he used was milk. And to keep milk from spoiling, you end up heating it up, and it's time temperature related. And what he ended up doing is what we call vat pasteurization. Vat pasteurization is where we heat the milk up to 143 degrees. This is the old way of doing it. We don't do it now. Heat it up to 143 degrees, and we hold it for 30 minutes. Remember that number. We're holding for 30 minutes. You got a big vat. You put steam to her, and then you just keep bringing the temperature up till you get up to 143 degrees, and then you monitor it for the health department with a chart recorder until it was end up at 30 minutes, and then we cool it back down. We went beyond that, and we end up, they invented high temperature short time, HTS. That's where we end up pasteurizing on the fly. And we're going to show, when we get into the pictures, I'll show you that. When we end up pasteurizing with a high temperature short time, we heat it up to a minimum of 161 degrees, and we hold it for 15 seconds. You see the time temperature related? If we raise the temperature up, we decrease the time. All right? UHT milk, which you're seeing a lot in the store now, ultra high temperature milk, they heat it up to 262 degrees. Now, how can you heat it up to 262 degrees and not hit something happen? What's under pressure and vacuum? They heat it up to 262 degrees and they hold it for 3 seconds. See the correlation? We raise the temperature, we lower the time. Okay? So that's where the pasteurization came from. All right. Anybody got any questions before we go on? Go ahead,
Did they
Joe.
send it through a pipe so they didn't have such a mess to?
I'm going to show you that as we go through the pictures. It's called a holding tube on that. On the vat, it just stayed in the vat. And you had, I'm glad you asked this, you had 2 temperature probes in there. You had a temperature probe that was in the milk to show it was 143 degrees, and you also had a temperature probe on the airspace that the health department required up there. Right, so you had to monitor the airspace in there. Then the temperature probe that was in the milk was tied to a chart recorder on the wall. That was the label document to show the health department that the milk was being pasteurized. I'll give you some facts on pasteurization. That's what I was looking for on my cheat sheet here. Pasteurization started about 1947 in the United States. It was mandatory. It grew going through there. It was mandatory in 1973 if any dairy was shipping interstate commerce, meaning we went from Kentucky over into Ohio, you end up pasteurizing all your product. That's called interstate shipping. And it's all regulated by the FDA And at the time, they had the individual health departments. We had Newport had their own health department down there, and they were watching everything. But most everything is all regulated there. When we get into the slides, I can end up pointing it out a little bit more, and you'll end up seeing what it's done. This slide that you're going to start seeing is all from the modern era. And when you look at all this, I want to tell everybody in this room, I could not have done this just by myself. This required all the people that work for us buying into our system of how we get that. Yes, it was the Trauth family, setting away how we were going to do things and that, but it was our employees that ended up doing it. They bought into our system, and they were the ones, as much as the Trauth were, putting the quality out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to apologize. So I wanted to tell everybody that and give a shout out to them. We got former employees. Charlie DeMoss back there was with us for 35 years. 40. Karen Pratt back there was my secretary. She split between me and Andy and Dave. And Donna Kramer's husband was my plant manager. But all these people contribute to what we did down there. This wasn't about Steve Trauth, wasn't about Dave Trauth, wasn't about Andy Trauth, wasn't about Jim Trauth. It was a combination of everybody pulling together, going forward to where we were going. And that's what made us special about doing it. We were feared in the dairy business. Our competition feared us. When the Trauth boys came into town, they didn't want us in there because they knew they were up against somebody. So let's go ahead. This is the office that we built. Jim was the last guy on the list when we were doing our building. He finally got a new building there, but we built that in 1988. That was the headquarters there. Good.
Is that on 11th Street, right?
That's on 11th Street. By the way, let me give you a little, jumping all around. What got me started on doing this, I keep seeing on Facebook, everybody was talking about Wiedemann this, Wiedemann that. You see what's happening in Campbell County, they talk about, Wiedemann. I got so daggone mad about this, I said, Wiedemann can't hold a candle what we did. We had over 150, I'm tooting my horn now, but we had over 150 properties in Newport that we owned. And we kept quiet about it. Nobody knew we just went about doing our business, what we needed to do. We put out quality products. There was 4 houses going across. You can kind of see there's a thing, section there, section there, section there, and a section there. So that's where the homestead was, and then behind that is where, as I was telling you, where the summer kitchen was and the original dairy ended up starting. My dad, when he got out of the service, bought a house right here at 54 East 11th Street, where I grew up till I was 6 years old. And he built the house in Fort Thomas off of Grand Avenue on Edgewood Drive. And that became the office right there on there. And then the other 2 houses were neighbors that were in there. We eventually bought all that up. This part of the building right here was built in 1980. This was our second big expansion. So we had this house, the case room, the filling room, and the blow mold upstairs up here. That big building over there was a milk cooler, and we built that in 1992. That's 198 feet long by 138 feet going down the other street there. That complex, the whole dairy, if you look at that overhead over there, it was around 15 acres that we owned all together. It was 5 city blocks long from Washington, or from York Street all the way to Washington on one side. We bought the old Wiedemann Mold House property over on 13th Street. We owned that. Then we went across the bridge here. You remember seeing the name still on the railroad bridge. We bought the old depot property, and that took us all the way to Washington. And then we ended up bought on the other side, on this side of the street, that you're seeing over here.
On this side.
On this side of the street, where Campbell County Chevrolet was, that was the old clover-leafed area over there. It was right across there. And then, I don't know if some of you older folks remember Evil's. Evil's was right here. This is John, come down here. Evil's was right on the corner right there. So we owned from York all the way down to Washington. We owned on this side of the street where we bought the old Cloverleaf part from Campbell County. We bought where the casket company was on the corner of 11th and York. That was our office parking lot. And we also bought where the Campbell County Fiscal Court building was. We owned that. So we ended up, we were taking both sides of the street. And then, about 1989, if you all remember Mickey Link, that had the Trauth beer distributorship down in Newport, and the Miller beer distribution down there. Well, he ended up, Mickey died about 88, I think. About the same time, our dad died. Our dad died of cancer in 1989. And I'll tell you a story about that. I'll share this personal thing on that. So, might get a little emotional because it meant a lot to me. Dad called me up one day, and he's been sick for about a year and a half. He ended up dying of lung cancer. So he calls me up one day and says, "Steve, I want to see you." So I said, "Fine." I said, "What do you want to see me about?" I said, "I just want to see you." So, you know, out of respect for your parents, you end up doing what you do. So I went over and got Andy, told him, I said, "Dad wants to see us." So we drove out to his house in Fort Thomas out there, and he's back in the TV room, laying on the couch here. He's just about to the end of his life. All right. We knew it was getting close. And we paid him all through for about 18 months, all through it. Just remember that. So I go in there, me and Andy go in, we sit down. I sit down in his chair. He's laying on the couch. He says, "I can't take my paycheck anymore."
Good, isn't he?
Herb Schultz, Vern Moreland, BH&T, Belcher, Harringer, Turner. Anybody remember all those guys? All right, those are all raw milk haulers that started hauling milk.
Go back on and they flip upside down and go right back out on the truck.
Yeah. So we progressed from the cans right there to these big road tankers. That one on the left right there. Right there, this one here held 6,500 gallon right there. That's another one that held 6,000. That's another one that held 6,000. I'll get that. It took about 150,000 gallon milk a day to run the plant. So we had coming in off the farms there. The cow produces anywhere from 75 pounds to 92, 95 pounds a day. What its cows produce. So they're lined up coming in, and they're going to back into the receiving garage right here. Back in here, we had a 3-bay garage right there, back in, going into there. This is the key, what I'm going to tell you now, of where the quality started. All right? This is what distinguished Trauth Dairy from all the other dairies. It's right here. You can't make good milk out of bad. If it would come in bad, it's not going to go through the plant and come out the other end good. All right? So I lowered the standards, and not going into the technical side, I lowered the standards you're allowed 300,000 on the bacteria by the FDA. I lowered it down to 100,000 coming in. There's a theory that when you pump the milk off, when we pump it off of the pump and go into the silos there, these two silos right here hold 50,000 gallons apiece, and the two smaller ones held 20,000 gallons apiece. We started off with these 220s in 1975, and then 1985 we ended up doing that, and then in 2001 I put a 60,000 gallon one right here on this corner, and then in 2007 or 8 they put a 40,000 there, so we could hold 240,000 gallons of raw milk here every day. So anyway, the milk would come in, and before we'd unload it, we test for standard plate count, or direct mite count, excuse me, where we take the sample out of the top of the tank there with a sanitary dipper. We pull that out, and we're going to show where the lab is. We go up to the lab, and we run a direct mite on it, which would end up telling us what the bacteria was on that load. We run titratable acidity, which that's the acid degree value of the milk going in, and then we'd also run added water. If the farmer, when they went from cans, 10-gallon cans, to bulk tanks, in 1957 they went to bulk tanks, they'd be flushing the lines out from the milking coil into the bulk tank and put water in it. Well, I don't want to buy water. All I want to do is buy milk, so I don't want to buy any extra water. So we'd end up testing for water. If it passed all this test to my standards that I had, they'd get an okay, and they'd end up pumping it into one of those silos right there. Is everybody up to speed, or should I stop and we take questions? Yes, ma'am.
What,
Yep. Let the lady back here.
what would happen to the milk that the hauler would turn down?
That would get down, normally when Kraft Cheese was open down in Fulton, Kentucky, normally it got, for this area, I'm glad you asked that, let me stop a little bit. There was 8 million pounds of milk that came down Route 8 at one time. 1988, they had the whole herd buyout, and we lost 4 million pounds of the 8 million that Thomas and Flahar. Does anybody remember Thomas and Flahar brothers?
Yeah.
There's Amy, what's your last name now? Originally she was Amy Flahar. Alan Flahar's daughter sitting back there in the back. So anyway, her dad's name, or nickname was Scrooge Brother, we called him. I haven't seen her for how long on there. When she first came up tonight, I go, holy cow. Brings back memories I'm doing. So to answer your question, ma'am, it went down to Kraft Cheese down in Oldton down there, and they made hard cheese out of it towards the end. Then after that, when Kraft closed down, it went up to Carnation up in Maysville, and they made evaporated milk out of it. Normally it got rejected. Campbell County here and Pendleton County, laying up all the way up, going up the river up there to Augusta, and a little bit on further up to Minerva up there, is all river bottom land, and it all had locust trees up through there, plus a lot of onions. And the cow doesn't know the difference between grass and onions. All right? So back later on, we had one thing called evaporator that put the milk under a vacuum, and end up we'd run the temperature up to 260 degrees, and we'd suck that off, that odor off of there with the evaporator. Well, that evaporator would only run about 1,000 gallon a day, or 1,000 gallon hours, excuse me. And so as we kept growing and getting bigger, I finally had to take the thing out, and we end up start grading it. That's one of the things we end up doing. 90% of the quality program was with the human nose. We had a guy originally there by the name of Albie Wright. He was there, and another guy by the name of Roy Plummer. that was there the early part on. Then we went to a guy by the name of Chuck Norris, and then we went to another guy by the name of Carl Answaller, and he was the last guy there. They were the first line of defense with the milk coming in, and they popped the lid on that tank right there and they'd smell it. And we'd try and smell good milk, what we call barn lot milk, or loafing pen milk, was where cows tied up into the stanchion barns every day. They would stay in the barns, or they stay right in the loafing pens. They just roam around the pens. And then there's feedlot or field milk and that. That's where they go out and they just graze on grass. That's where your all natural organic milk is. Those cows are feeding on grassland all the time in order to be called organic. Organic milk doesn't have as high as milk solids because of the being fed grass versus being fed on corn. So anyway, if everything's okay, pass those tests, we make a decision, the land would end up saying okay, we'd end up pumping that off, and the milk would go up into the silos and stay there for about 12 hours. This is in the back end of the parking lot. I apologize, some of these slides are out of sequence, but this is all the trucks staged there by the milk cooler. Over on this side over here, where this one trailer is sticking out right in that area. That was the empty case room right there. And then on top right up here is this area here is called part of the processing blend of showing you. Good, Steve. Probably saying that things are out of sequence. This is inside 1992. We end up building the ice cream plant in that far building down by York Street. This is Tommy Strayer running the rectangular ice cream carton, and we'll show some slides there. This is the ice cream coming in right here, dropping down, and right about there it's going down into the carton. The carton's being made on the bottom over here, and then it indexes forward, drops down into that carton right there, indexes forward again, or another thing, and ends up closing it up, and then it comes on out. Go ahead. This is another angle right there of the cartons going in.
Tell them how cold the freezer was.
Well, I'll get to that, Charlie. Hold on a second. Get ahead of yourself. Back up a minute, Steve. Back up. Tommy's adjusting the weight. There's a knob right there. He's down there trying to adjust the weight on the carton to get the proper fillage on that. And I'm going to show you, when we get up into some other slides here, I'm going to show you where the magic happens. This is what everybody wants to know, where the magic's at. So we're going to end up showing you that. All right, good. This is the pint filler, where we fill the round pints right in there. That's a de-scrambler right there. These are the cartons. Right here is the cartons going up, down. There's screws on here, drop down, and it goes around. This is the ice cream coming down right here, going into there, and it comes around, picks up a lid right here, and it'll come out on here.
Wow. Ready?
Yeah. You can see it exiting. We're running pet ice cream. We were making ice cream for pet dairy down in Miami, Florida, when we were shipping all the way down to Miami down there. And that's where the day we were doing that is we were running their ice cream. Okay, go ahead.
Yep.
This is another picture of the pint there. This machine in the back right here is the one that ran the drumsticks that you end up seeing and buying all the time. Go ahead. Here's the ice cream freezer that Charlie was just talking about. This is where we stored all the ice cream. It was 4 pallets high, 26 feet tall, minus 20 in there. And we're going to show, I'll show you. The guys in there, they wore special suits called refrigerator. And then they also had snow boots on, and then we had special gloves made out of pig skin to keep their hands warm.
Great.
And they were picking, you see the different products and all staged in there. These are the delivery carts right here to get delivered to the C stores. The C store is a convenience store like up there, Ameristop, Speedway and stuff like that. That's a convenience store. And that's this carts are being loaded for the stores right there. Okay. This is the new addition, and you can see back here the guy in the green suit. That's a refrigerator right there. He's all bundled up, and like I was telling you before, it's -1 in there. Does anybody know why we got to keep ice cream that cold?
So it don't run out of the bottom of the carton.
Damn wise there. How cold's ice get? Anybody know how cold ice gets?
32.
Can it get any colder?
But it becomes ice.
No, it can't. Ice can never get any colder than 32. You're changing from a liquid state, water, to a frozen state. Once you change to a frozen, I'm not trying to trick you on that, but you change from a liquid state, water, to a frozen state, ice cube. All right. The ice cream in here and the other picture will only go to 0 core. When you see the cart, the coldest it'll get in the center of that cart is 0. That's as cold as it'll get. We end up, we're going to want to get some more pictures. I'll explain to you on those as we're going along. All right?
Right.
Yep. Okay, these are the got any buttermilk drinkers in here? No, we can't find any good buttermilk, can we? That was my pride and joy.
Let's not talk about it.
Huh?
We won't talk about the eggnog.
We'll talk about it. We're going to get to the eggnog. We're going to show you where the magic's at. All right, these are 3 of 9 buttermilk vats. Those are 2,000 gallons apiece. The buttermilk is what we are known for. I have brought so many gold medals home from the Kentucky State Fair that we lost. We ran out of room in the office to put it on there. This is one of them. Over 150 gold medals that we brought home.
All from buttermilk?
No.
Oh, okay.
We got cottage cheese,
Okay.
chocolate milk. There's one for cottage cheese. I didn't bring them all down. That's our one for cottage cheese. This one here is about large curd. And I'm going to talk about that, the difference between large curd and small curd, and how we got that when we get to the pictures. It's a little bit more self-explanatory. But anyway, when we end up, I'm going to give you some of the secrets, now that I'm retired, so I can end up putting out of the bag. We end up putting, in the case of whole buttermilk, or 325. You guys all remember we got 4 different butter fats. We got skim milk, which is 0.05. We got 1%, we got 2%, and we got 325. The milk, back when we saw this tractor trailers, the raw milk, when the milk comes in off the farm, it's at 3.8 to 4.2% butter fat. The butter fat will change. It'll go from 4.2, it'll drop all the way down to 3.3, depending on how much water the cow drinks. If she's uncomfortable, like during the summer, the cow likes being about 88 degrees and hardly any humidity. The humidity kills them. During the summer around here in July, August, when the humidity get up there to 95, the milk production just go like that. It'd fall off. To the point where I'd end up having to order two more of those trailers that it fell off that much. So, the good buttermilk, as we called it. We made in there. We put 325 butterfat in there, put it in those tanks. Then we'd add lactose, milk sugar. We put that in there. And then we'd heat it up to 190 degrees and sterilize the milk. Why did we do that? Anybody got an idea? Don't answer, Troy. Anybody got an idea?
Did you melt the butter fat?
No, it was we sterilized the milk because we were going to grow a live culture in it, and we had to have a clean sheet. All right, in order for we took a 10 gallon. This goes back to get the live bacteria in there. Bulgarius and lactobacillus. The lactobacillus is the acid bacteria, and the Bulgarius is the CO2 making the diacetyl. And you're not seeing that anything around here right now. None of this buttermilk right here has got diacetyl flavoring. Because they don't have Bulgarius bacteria. That's what produces the CO2. And that's what gives it this flavor. What we're missing. You must say-
Definitely it's not as rich.
It's flat.
Yeah, right,
It's flat.
yeah.
All right, so we heat up to 190 degrees we hold it for an hour, and then we cool it back down to about 74, 76, and then we'd end up putting 4 cans of live cultures in there. That was the old ways, and then later on, as the technology got better, they ended up taking a quart carton that had the concentrated bacteria in there and put in there. To take 4 quart cartons to inoculate each one of them tanks. We'd end up sitting and let that grow for 16 hours. You could watch it, what I was telling you about before, the chart recorders. These are the chart recorders right here. It's got the temperature on there standing there. When we get to about, the bacteria cell splits every 30 minutes. So we start out with 1, 30 minutes, you got 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, etc. All of a sudden, until you get into 16 hours, you got millions on there. It goes in as a liquid. 16 hours later, it's like putting, when the ladies put Jello in the refrigerator, goes in as a liquid, turns to a solid. That's how buttermilk does when it's made properly. You'll end up, you take the ladle and you scoop down in there, and that hole where you took the ladle will stay right there. You pull it up, and you end up tasting it. That was the best time to end up tasting buttermilk.
The tang,
Huh?
the tang.
The tang, correct. So anyway, we'd end up doing, we'd end up checking the titratable acidity, and we'd end up checking the flavor in that, and then we'd end up turning the chilled water on it and start cooling it down so the bacteria wouldn't grow anymore. When I talk about bacteria, I tell people there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria, all right? The bad stuff, the dreaded word cancer that everybody, so the good bacteria is the kind of stuff that we were growing. We need that to grow that for the cottage cheese, sour cream, and the buttermilk. Also, if we end up, sorry, coming away. We were doing 1% AB, which is Acidophilus bifidin. That's a different bacteria on that. Okay. One of the things I want to show, well, this is a good picture here. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to end up showing you, do you see how clean everything is? That milk plant, I'm tooting my horn again, that milk plant could compete with any dairy in the United States. We were world champions. They gave me 1,000 points. This is where all my people came together. Charlie can remember this. Donna's husband. Carson was too young. That's one of my grandsons right there too. I forgot to mention him. But all these guys end up bringing together till we get to where we need it to be in order to maintain the cleanliness of that plant. One guy told me, he said, Steve, your plant's cleaner than a hospital. If you end up noticing around, we're gonna go around, you see stainless steel doors right back there. We spent the extra money and went the extra mile to go that. This quarry tile was 1 3/8 inches thick there. The drains right here were all stainless steel. Stuff like that. The cans right over there. Then I'll get these, right here, what we're doing, this VT 1, 2, and 3. This is where the magic started to happen for you people. This is where the sour cream started. This is where the cottage cheese started. The cottage cheese dressing, not the cottage cheese per se, but the cottage cheese dressing started in these tanks right here. Also, the chocolate milk started in these tanks. You're seeing the start on there. And that gentleman over there is Jim Bonahar, another one of our loyal employees that was with us for 35 years. He's over there, he's dialing it in, some of the ingredients coming in. These valves up there, right there, that's coming from the blend tank over in the room over here on this side, which we don't have a picture of. But one set of valves got the cocoa powder coming in, it's already mixed up. This has got a cream valve, and this is a milk valve. Let me tell you about the chocolate milk, because everybody asked about that, and I was stuck with on Steve's quote. Most of the dairies end up only using 5 pounds of cocoa to 100 gallons of milk. Remember that number I just told you. They put that on their school milk. We end up seeing on our competition, we called it chalk water because it was light brown. Right? Our school milk that went in at 2% and 1% had 8 pounds of cocoa in that we put in for our school milk. What we called our good chocolate had 12 pounds of cocoa. That was the secret to end up doing. Everybody wanted to chintz up on making their byproducts on there, and the consumer picked up on it. You all picked up on when the stuff wasn't where it needed to be. So we end up figured out a long time ago, if we give the consumer what they want, they will pay for what we're giving them. So then, when we're making ice cream, in the back here, you got to remember the vats over there where we just left. We're coming over here, we got storage vats over in this area here. I don't have a picture of that, but that's coming in. The white, we got a plain white mix that goes in what we call a flavor vat back here. There's 3 of them, 3 500-gallon flavor vats back here. And we put the vanilla in there, or we put butter or something on that. Does anybody know how to grade ice cream while we're on the ice cream? Anybody know how to do, because you're all like ice cream lovers, I know that.
Good, better, and best.
Let me tell you the proper way to do it. This is an educational sign out.
Yeah, you got it.
When you end up doing that, first thing you want to taste is the creaminess of the vanilla. You always taste on vanilla. Don't ever, the condiments when they put it in there, that loads it up, and the first thing you taste is the condiments. Namely cookies and cream, all right? Or if it's black raspberry chip, the first thing you're going to end up tasting is the chip. But when you're grading ice cream, you get the ice cream, there's 3 positions on your tongue, the front, the middle, and the back. When you end up tasting wine, the wine tasters, they tilt their head back and get the wine on the back side of the tongue, because that's the most sensitive part of the palate on the tongue. End up doing. Ice cream, you want to get it, put it in your mouth, and get it up to the roof of your mouth and test for the graininess or the texture of the stuff. And when you're doing that, you also pick up the creaminess. That's the first thing you should pick up is the cream in the ice cream. The next thing is this vanilla, you'll pick up the vanilla flavoring. The next thing you'll pick up is the sweetness of it or the amount of sugar that's in there. Okay? And if it doesn't meet any of those 3 criteria for you, it's going to be garbage. Anyway, Tommy's in there, he's dialing in on there. These things here, down here on the bottom, are metering, where we're metering the mix in, going through these tubes here. Comes up here and it goes into this barrel, and it's got a big dasher in there that's going around like this as it's going down. You guys, when you're making homemade ice cream, it's vertical, well, we're horizontal. We got liquid ammonia all around the tube, this barrel right here. Going around here and all around there. As it comes out the front end, it's 19 degrees. We're taking it from a liquid state, which is about 34 degrees, liquid, and we're freezing it into a solid state. So it's going in the back end right there at 34 degrees, and it's coming out here at 19 degrees. That's another view of the frame. This is all the stainless steel lines running around through there. Right, this stuff right in here is going into what Charlie was talking about. It's called the VRT, variable retention time. We're going to show you that as we go along. This is the high temperature short time, it's slide sequence. This is the high temperature short time unit that I put in 1998. It runs 8,000 gallon hours. At the time I put that in, it was the largest pasteurizing unit in the state of Kentucky. It ran 8,000 gallons. This is what they call the balance tank right here. This is where the raw milk came in from the silos that we saw in the previous pictures. Came in here, and then from there, this one is a two-sided press. And there's a front section which we don't have, which is the pasteurized section. This big section right here is what they call the regen section. And then there was a chiller section that had what we call sweet water or chilled water. And then there's another section that had glycol, where we took the milk down from down to 32 degrees before we put it in these pasteurized tanks. Over here, I'm sorry we didn't get the front end on that, but that's where the pasteurization of the milk occurred, where we heated it up to 167 degrees, and we held that in a holding tube. I think I'll be able to show you on another slide. There's a big long holding tube that was about 150 feet. It ran around like this. It started at the bottom, and the milk had to come up here, and then it come up to two flow diversion valves. Those were our legal valves for you people to protect you. And they said, okay, when it got up, we had probes up there, said, okay, you're pasteurized legally, one valve switches, and we went on, and we went back down the backside of the regenerator, and then we went into the chilled section, then we went into the glycol section, then we went out, and I'm going to show you where it went to the pasteurized tanks. Those little things right here, these are the vitamins that we read, vitamin D and vitamin A and D. We were required by the FDA to put 400 units of vitamin D in, and that was one of the meters right there. You can see the vitamins right here in the jug. And vitamin A and D, we were required to put 200 units, 2,000 units of vitamins A and D. That went into 2% and 1%. The 400 units went into whole milk only. This is Jim Baker, another one of our longtime employees. He was with us for over 40 years. This is a TV screen that we put, I did all this in 1992, where we changed over. We went from a manual plant, changing valves manually, to a fully automated plant. Shut the thing down Friday night, Sunday night I started up. Got on that TV screen right there. Ask yourself two questions. What do you want to run? Where do you want to go? End up doing all that. Okay. All right, this is high temperature short time number 2. This press, or short time, ran all the chocolate milk, cottage cheese dressing, ice cream mix, fruit drinks, etc., etc. It only ran at 4,500 gallons an hour. on fast speed and 2250 on slow. You can see back there in the back, this is the holding tube for this one right here. In the back right there. And it started down here and it kept going around and around. And over here, there's the flow diversion valves over here. This is a separator. It was a big centrifuge. This spun around at 4,600 RPMs a minute. Right here, the raw milk went down the center right there, down into the separator. And this had 187 discs like this go up, and they were all stacked together. The milk could go down and hit a big stainless steel bowl down at the bottom, right here. As this thing's spinning around, the centrifugal force that spin out only the cow's blood cells that she passed when they end up having inflation on her. And if they did pull the inflation off, which now they got automatic, when she's done milking, it automatically drops off. When the sensor doesn't sense any more milk coming out of the teat, the thing will drop off. If it stays on, it wants to keep pulling on that teat, and it ends up pulling blood cell down, and it ends up getting in the milk. We don't want that out in the public, so it goes through a centrifuge there and slings those things to the outside. So we end up, with all that happening, we'd end up dropping the milk down. It'd end up being 3.8% butterfat, and we want to make 2%, all right? So it separates. Since the cream was lighter, it would fall to the center, and the skim milk was heavier, it'd go to the outside because of the centrifugal force. The skim would come out on this side, and the cream would come out over here on this side. There's 1 gallon of milk, or excuse me, there's 1 gallon of cream for every 10 gallon of milk. Okay? So out of 10 gallon of milk, you get 9 gallons of skim and 1 gallon of cream. Remember that. Alright? So now when we end up, and the milk's 3.8% butterfat. Alright? But we only want, if we're making homo, we only want to make 3.25. So we take this metering valve right here, and we dribble the cream back into the skim line right here to the desired butterfat that we want. So if we want skim, we wouldn't put anything back in. If we wanted 1%, we dribble a little bit in. If we wanted 2%, we dribble a little bit more in. If we wanted 3.25, we dribble a little bit more in. Now remember, I said the milk was 3.8. So I got the difference between 3.25 and 3.8. That cream is going to go off to another tank, this line right here, and we're going to save that because we're going to make ice cream mix. And we need a lot of butterfat or cream to make the ice cream mix. That's where the surplus cream goes. Okay, go ahead. This is our state certified lab where everything was tested. Again, remember I was telling you when we were down over the raw milk tankers were coming in, we were doing the test. She's doing a direct mic test right there. We're looking on a slide right there. She's counting the bacteria cells are on that slide. This tester right here was for the added water. This tester back here was the snag cell tester, which we end up checking for the blood cells that the cow come in. We don't want it. You're not allowed to have, by FDA standards, more than 750,000 on snag cell count coming in on grade A raw milk. I didn't like that number, so my number was 500,000. I lowered it down because I wanted to make those guys better. That's another thing. Once the farmer got used to doing our standards, that became a way of life for them. And they didn't want to deviate because they knew I was watching them. Back in the back, it's going to be hard. Back here was the butterfat tester. It's an infrared tester. tester, and it was tested for the butterfly. Again, you can see the stainless steel doors, red quarry tile floor, et cetera, et cetera. This is spring water here where we were tested for spring water we were running that day, et cetera. These boxes right here, this is interesting, you might want to see this. These are where we grew, checked for the bacteria. We grew E. coli in there. We checked that every day, and this was the standard lake count where we checked that every day. We checked for E. coli on everything that we did, everything that we run to make sure we were completely clean going out to you public. Okay, go ahead. This is the blow mold room. This is where the gallon jugs were made. Up here, in this area right here. The pellets, when we get that, the pellets that come in, I'll show you in our slide later on. The pellets that come in and look like rabbit pellets, or the resin that look like rabbit pellets. Anybody got rabbits? Remember when you had rabbits when you were a kid? When you fed them, they were little pellets. Well, that's how the resin looked when a kid. We call them resin pellets. Yeah, just terminology that we end up using. Well, that goes in, drops down into this hopper right here, goes down in there, and we had a big auger in there, turn it around. We started heating the resin up to 350 degrees. It was going forward, coming up through there, up through this, right this way, and ended up coming up to get heated up to 350 degrees. That auger pulled back, and then we shove it forward quick. It's called a shot. And the resin had come out of the manuals like this and dropped down. And if you look at a half gallon or a gallon, you got two sides of the mold. And it opened up like this and come together. The resin come down, or the resin come down first, and then two sides come together, and then blow air in it. That blow the resin out to the side of it, and it had glycol around it there. They come up the cooling bed, and we trim off the tails and the neck inserts. I was just at Walmart today checking the dairy case out, see what was going on there. We're still doing stuff after we're retired. My wife gets on me all the time because we go into town, so I gotta go look at the dairy. How many dairies you gonna look at? Well, I gotta look at another one.
Is there federal employees observing in here?
Now, all those chart reporters are our legal instruments. They would come around and look at, that was our legal document for everything that we did. And they'd end up checking that on a quarterly basis. They'd come in and do it. That's their house. They end up telling you, about when we get going there. So, go ahead, Steve.
Do they tell you when they're coming?
No. They'll just walk in. Unannounced visit. This is the cheese filling room where we're filling the cottage cheese. We were the first area in this area to put tamper-ever packaging in it, and that's this right here. We put that band around there. If you remember the band, this is the cheese filler down here. They go underneath there and they get a band put around the top of it. Now everybody's using an inner seal. Well, one of the last things I did before I retired is ordered the new filler right here, and this was replaced. And we ended up putting an inner seal where you take the top off and pull the seal back. Again, you can see how clean everything is right there. That was throughout the whole plant. Okay, Steve. This is the pint filler right here. This is where everybody's seeing now. In 1998, we put this in. We had to change our whole line of thinking about being in the dairy business. Because that thing ran at 400 bottles a minute. And our fastest other machine ran at 268. So we had to think like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. We had to change our whole life. All our casing technology, we had to end up going to Coca-Cola, Pepsi style casing technology, where before we grabbed everything and slid this way and down, a lot of right angles. Well, we had to do all the way with all that. Okay. This is the labeler machine where we were putting the labels on, going on for the PT bottles. Go ahead, Steve. This is Charlie's, this is where Charlie hung out all the time. Charlie lost back there. This is Charlie's machine right here. He hung out there for 35 years. Not that particular machine, he had another one, but we're running 2% half pints going to the schools. And I was telling people, we even posted on Facebook that they ran 316,000 bottles of beer every day. I'm going, that ain't nothing. We ran 560,000 half pints every day. We didn't think nothing of it. That was just on 2 machines. That was just those 2 right there. They had 8 machines trying to run 316,000. We had 2. Again, everything's all stainless steel that you're seeing here. All this overhead, stainless, quarry tile floors, all the machines, everything. Anything that Bill touched was all stainless. Okay. This is the quart machine where ran the squat cart. This is what they call a squat cart. The other one, the first picture was Slim Pack. This was the old standard when they first came out. It was this way. And then they changed over, and the footprint of it became this. This was a 4-ounce carton, and the 8 ounce is a little bit taller than this. That's typical. This is the last edition I did in 2001. We tore it apart that Grandpa built in 1926. We tore it all down and replaced it with this new edition right here. Here's where everybody wants to see. Alright, who's the cottage cheese lovers? Alright, here's where the cottage cheese is at. Go to the next one, Steve, because that's the one that's got it.
Yeah.
Alright. These vats that you're looking at right now are 3,600 gallons. We put skim milk in there at night, set it at 90 degrees, what we call a short set. The long set we'd set at 72, and then that'd take 12 hours to end up coming around. If we raise the temperature up to 90 degrees, we could go on a short set of 5 hours. We end up putting the skim milk in there at night, about 12 o'clock at night. Put the starter, the good bacteria in there, the live cultures we pump in there. Then we put a remnant in there, and we'd end up growing that for 5 hours. And what we were doing, we were binding up the milk solids in the milk. All right? Milk is 80, out of 100%, milk is 86% water and 14% solids on there. Milk solids on there. All right? So we were binding that up in there. The next morning it'd come in and that'd be, just like I was telling you about when the ladies make jello, you put it in as a liquid, 32 hours later, it's a solid. Same thing happens, but we come in and we look and see if the thing was floating like this, because this was a controlled air space. We controlled all the air going into this room, this cottage cheese room, because it was a sterile room. We were trying to grow live bacteria, and these vats were all open. Anyway, so all that's going on. Come in, we check it. Trader Boy cities, 52%, etc. Everything be okay. Then we get the knives out. When we run the knives, we had 2 sets of knives. We had vertical knives with wires in. Visualize, they were about this big by this there, and fit the back this wide. They were vertical. And we had another set we put on the other side that were horizontal. Same thing. We run those down the whole length of the back to cut the cheese into the low curves that you're so used to seeing in the cartons. Yes, ma'am?
Why did they stop making large curd?
Because the demand went down. Large curd was in the earlier 50s, 60s. All right, I'll stop here for a minute. Small curd is done with 3/16" spacing on the knives, the wires on that. That's how you get the small curd. The large curd was done with half-inch spacing, so the wires were half-inch apart, all right? The large curd, unless you're technically advanced like we were, I'm gonna toot my horn again. When people made large curd, if you didn't let the curd in, I'm gonna tell you a little bit, if you didn't let the curd heal, if you made the cut, it shattered, all right? You had to stop what we call healing. Now, let me get into this and I'll explain a little bit, all right? But the demand for large curd went down, all right? Let me stop there for a minute, another thing. The curd itself is bland. When we get to the slide before, I'm going to show you. The curd itself is a bland taste. There's no flavor to it whatsoever, all right? The flavoring comes from the dressing. All right. We had a special thing that we did for our dressing. Again, it goes back to the diacetyl flavoring, which is what you're looking for. Kroger's doesn't have it. Myers doesn't have it. There's nobody that did what we're doing. But there's a madness why we did it. And you all appreciated what we were doing. So anyway, we'll get back to it. So we come in the morning and we cut that. The whey's coming up to the top right there. And we sit there and we let it heat, what we call healing. And where the knife went down through there, it disturbed the casing in the back there. And we have to have time for it to heal a little bit. So we wait about 30 minutes. And while we're waiting the 30 minutes, the whey's migrating to the top. Now we got to get the whey out of the casing, so we start injecting steam to it in the backpack here. You can see the steam coming off of it, and we cook the whey out of it. All right. The firmness of the curd. Where's Paula Rushman? Her, huh? Sorry. Her husband, who's since passed away, but her husband was a cottage cheese maker. He'd end up, the longer he cooked that, the firmer the curd became. It's a science to know when to stop cooking it. All right? You cook it too long, and remember the rabbit pellets become too hard. You cook it just right, and when you put it in your mouth again, it's got that nice taste to it. Or you get the stuff that's out there now that's all mush. All right? I'm going to tell you a secret. I'll stop here for a minute. If you ever get a carton of cottage cheese and it's dry with no cream on it, get some half and half and pour on it. And it'll make it where it needs to be. Everybody remember that. That's a little secret for you. Instead of complaining, it's dry, don't have any cream on it. Get you some half and half, pour on it. It's not going to have much flavor because the half and half doesn't have much flavoring to it, because all the flavoring is done with the cheese dressing that goes on it. The ratio of cheese dressing to the curd is 60-40. 60% dressing, 40% coming in on the curd. Yes, ma'am.
When I was a kid, they used to have cottage cheese that was cream.
Smooth.
Yeah, smooth. No curds in it at all.
Yeah, they run it through a blender and smash it all up. The old term of that is called baker's cheese.
Baker's cheese?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You run this operation 24 hours a day?
Once we start up on Sunday nights, you ran straight through until sometime Saturday. It all depends on you, the consumer, how much you guys bought, is how much I ran. You know, you guys depend, you go out and buy a lot, we'd end up keep running. We didn't stop. We didn't, okay, we're only going to run this. We ran until we had every order filled. Or some days, you know, we'd end up be meeting our tails. Charlie come in, and they'd still be running from the day before, and he'd end up having to clean up for the guy from the day that was supposed to be doing the cleanup. And that's because we got behind. Once we got behind on Monday or Tuesday, we were behind the whole week. We just couldn't get caught up. Back up to that. Okay, after you get done taking the way out, drain it off, we had to wash the curb 2 times. And this is Steve Starkey, that's it. Thank you. Steve Starkey on that. He's pouring the curb. This is the milk casing that's left after it was on there, and he's pouring it to the side, and he's draining the whey off coming to the front of the vat right here. And we washed that curb 2 times. We drained the whey off and put chilled water on it because we had to cool the curb down. And we drained that off. Then we put chilled water back on it again. We tried to get the curb down to 45 degrees. And now we sit there and let that, all the water, he's pouring to the side there, and that's pressing the water out of the curb, going down there where it's going down in the front right here. After that, after we wait about an hour doing that, we come in, there'll be another pipe down here in the back, and we start putting the cheese string dressing on there. That'd be over in a silo over on this side over here.
Okay.
That's the filling room where all the filling was going. You remember when I was telling you when the short time was running, all the milk would go into these pasteurized silos right here. We didn't have a balancing act between the fillers downstairs and that short time. That short time upstairs ran faster than the fillers could pull. So we had to have a balancing act on doing it. So that's what that was up there. You can also see right here, if you remember the blow mold room where the blow mold, the bottles were coming off the blow mold, they're coming down here to the filler right now. On this line right here, it's dropping down out of the blow mold room. So, all those are all filler. There's 2 half-pint fillers right here. Quart machine back here. There's 2 gallon fillers. Cheese filler was underneath, way back underneath there, and the pint filler was way back underneath there. Okay, see. That's another angle looking back the other way, going down that way. This is back where, this is what I was telling you, they're out of sequence. This is inside what we call the VRT, variable retention time. After that ice cream, remember that pint filler that come up here and go into the VRT right here, and we'd end up taking this down to minus 60 degrees in here, wind chill going in there at 60 mile an hour, and it take the pints or half gallons and it freezes to 0 degree at the core. With that going down at 60 mile an hour. Okay, Steve. This is the milk cooler where it's staging coming in off all the fillers. All lined up there, right there in the front. That's all the 2% there, and it goes on down. As I was telling you before, the cooler was 198 feet long, by 138 feet. It was 24,000 square feet. When we first went in there in 1992, I could hold all the day's production in there. But when we tried putting 150,000 gallon in there, it wouldn't hold it. So I needed a cooler stretcher. It didn't work.
Is that a day's worth of?
That's a day's work. That would be turned over, except for the stuff up on the racking right here.
Yeah.
That was all outside store-bought, what we call store-bought stuff. Be creamers, yogurt, lemonade concentrate, that was all stored up here. All this right in here would be turned over every day.
Milk.
Another shot of the cooler. This is what the inside of a milk trailer looked like when we staged it. That was a store right there, a particular order for a store. We'd end up staging based off how the route was run. And then the guys would load that, come on back, they sink land on the floor of load bars, and they get hooked into stuff right here. These are all our awards, as I was telling you before. This is on the wall going to my, I think that's Andrew's office there, this is my office. Yeah, I know. We ran out of wall space, where we're at there. Karen can attest to this, because I was her desk was real close by us. But you can see this, that went down on another wall over here, and another, we go to the next slide, you'll end up. This is Lori Lovack, one of our sales girls. A little backstory on her. This is how progressive we were. 1984, the dairies never put women out in the field. This was uncommon to end up doing that. In 1984, we hired Lori, and there was madness for doing it. And I ended up telling you the secrets. So we put hired Lori, and we assigned her to the schools. All the dietitians are what? We didn't have to break the male-female barrier when we went in and ended up talking. They meshed right together right off the bat. They couldn't figure out why we were getting business all the time. So Lori was with us for how many years, Karen? 30? 25?
30, I said.
Yeah, so I was trying to think of when I saw that picture Tuesday. But anyway, she's standing there next in front of all the stuff. This is a picture of my mom and dad. This is my mom and dad right here. This is my grandparents. This is Dave's mom and dad. Now I'll tell you a story about this plaque right there. I told Steve this the other day when I was out at the office out there. So you remember I showed you in the front there, in 1988, we built that office on that. Jim can attest to this because he was part of it. He ended up designing the office over there. He was the last one to get the stuff that we were going on. So we wanted to do something for our parents. They worked all their lives in this company, getting it to where it was, gave us what, us, the boys, start to where we could end up going and making something out of it. And they never got recognized for doing it. I ended up going, I went to Jim, I said, we got to do something on, Mom and Dad and Uncle Lloyd. So, about the time the office we started building it, Dad got sick. Remember I told us at the end of dying of lung cancer. So we ended up between 88 and 89, he's battling that. We finally got the office done. Jim and myself were ended up talking, and Jim ended up putting this plaque together, and I wanted to show Dad this plaque before he ended up passing. So I got a call on Sunday afternoon that he ended up passing. Monday morning, the plaque came in. And he never got to see it. So we hung that in the office here, and as you can all read, it says, in memory and dedication to Louis Trauth Jr. and Albert Trauth for a number of years that they ended up working in dedication to the business. Without them, it wouldn't have been made possible. That's that picture right over there of where the All-Star Dairy, there we were Dairy of the Year. Those are all our awards. And I say this, I don't think there's another dairy that came close to us trying to help.